Hello everyone, welcome to Barca News. It is June 10th, 2025, and after a meeting between Joan Laporta and Ceferin, UEFA have reduced their fine against Barcelona, but it's still a pretty hefty fine. Also, Joan Garcia has officially signed his contract with Barcelona, with the signing expected to be finalized soon. And finally, Ter Stegen continues to accumulate interest from other European clubs. We have a lot to discuss. So let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Mo. We'll begin this video with bad news. Well, I guess it's bittersweet news, let's put it that way, because Laporta has met with UEFA's president Alexander Ceferin, and after that meeting, UEFA agreed to reduce their fine against Barcelona for violations of financial fair play rules. However, it's still a pretty big fine, and that's why I say it's bittersweet, because on the one hand, it's good news that the fine was reduced. On the other hand, it's still a pretty big fine. Now let's go into the detail, because as I reported in a previous video, UEFA had announced that they would be sanctioning or fining Barcelona for violation of the financial fair play rules, and it all stems back to the summer of 2022 when Barcelona sold its own assets, like for example 25% of the TV rights in exchange for money, since the club was in a very bad financial state. This was dubbed as the economic levers, or the financial levers that Barcelona activated. Now, these levers, which is, again, the money that Barcelona made from selling its own assets, was accepted under La Liga's financial fair play. However, it was not accepted under UEFA's financial fair play, because even though La Liga allowed Barcelona to count that money that they made from the sale of their assets as operating income, under UEFA's financial fair play rules, you cannot count that money as operational income. Instead, you have to count it as gains from selling intangible items. So given that Barcelona counted it as operating income, like La Liga allowed them to do so, and since it's not allowed under UEFA fined Barcelona €500,000. Barcelona appealed that fine. They lost it. And then, of course, UEFA said, hey, that was your first fine. If you do it again, we're going to find you a bigger fine. And well, lo and behold, of course, Barcelona repeated that formula later on. And therefore, UEFA fined Barcelona a second time. But this time around, it was a €60 million fine. Yes, you heard that correctly. 60 million euro fine. Now, Joan Laporta did travel to the Nations League final between Spain and Portugal, and the reason why he was present, well, I'm sure he was also there to watch Barcelona players and support Spain, but the main reason why he was there was in order to meet with Alexander Ceferin, the president of UEFA, to try to negotiate that fine down. Now, thanks to Barcelona's lawyers, they crafted a persuasive argument that Joan Laporta used during this meeting with Alexander Ceferin, where Laporta, explained to Ceferin that, hey, Barcelona is not a sports public limited company, and it's a club owned by its own members, and because it's not a public limited company, Barcelona cannot inject cash through share capital. So the only way they could raise cash is by selling its own assets, and therefore, because Barcelona is owned by its own members, they cannot really recover as well as a publicly owned club that can inject cash through share capital. And therefore, that's why Barcelona needed to do that. And of course, Joan Laporta bringing his point across that, hey, this was allowed by La Liga. We didn't violate rules. We thought about doing this. We brought it up to La Liga. La Liga said, you're good. We did it. La Liga allowed it. Everything was good. But you, UEFA, you have different rules. But, please understand this was legal by La Liga's standard. And, of course, this was our only way to get out of the financial hole. Now, it seems that UEFA accepted Barcelona's argument, and they have agreed to reduce the fee or the fine from €60 million all the way down to 15 million euros, but only and only if Barcelona meet UEFA's financial fair play rule during this season. So if Barcelona meet the financial fair play requirements of UEFA during this whole season, then the fee will stay at 15 million. However, if Barcelona don't, then the fee will jump back up to 60 million euros. So this is why I say it's a bittersweet news, because on one hand, yes, it is better to pay 15 rather than 60, but on the other hand, it's still 15 million euros. It's a lot of money, but they're saying that Barcelona will count this fine as an extraordinary expense, so it shouldn't affect their profit margin. And if it doesn't affect the profit margin, therefore, it won't affect the financial fair play for this summer or the one-to-one rule. Now, again, this is not over. Barcelona's still going to have to comply with the financial fair play rules of UEFA this season. Otherwise, again, that fee could go back up to 60 million euros. Now, speaking of rules, financial fair play, registration, etc., 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 the Royal Spanish Football Federation have announced that they will be amending Article 130, which is the article that prevented Barcelona from registering Pau Victor and Dani Olmo. Now, in case you don't remember what happened, on December 31st, the registration of Dani Olmo and Pau Victor were set to expire because they were registered in the place of Andreas Christensen that had gotten injured during the first half of the season. Barcelona sold the rights to VIP seats at the Spotify Camp Nou in exchange of 100 million euros to be able to register Pau Victor and Dani Olmo. They did that before the deadline of December 31st. They submitted all the paperwork, but La Liga rejected that sale because they didn't have money assurances, or they didn't have assurances that the buyers were going to pay for those seats. Eventually, the assurances did arrive, but it didn't arrive until after the deadline on November 3rd or 4th, if I remember correctly. And that's when La Liga accepted it. Barcelona went under the one-to-one rule, but by now it was too late to register Pau Victor and Dani Olmo because of Article 130. Now, Article 130 states that you cannot register a player twice with the same club during the same season. So since Pau Victor and Dani Olmo's registrations had expired on December 31st, when Barcelona achieved the one-to-one rule on January 3rd or January 4th, registering the players again would have counted as registering twice in the same season, and Article 130 does not allow that. So Barcelona, of course, filed a case with the CSD. The CSD eventually ruled in favor of Barcelona, stating force majeure, or that's kind of like extraordinary or circumstances beyond the party, and when it comes to fulfilling your contract obligations. And also the Barcelona lawyers argued that the rule was not too clear. Well, it looks like the Royal Spanish Football Federation don't want to lose another case like this one, and they have decided to amend the rule. And now the rule is gonna strictly say, or it's going to be clarified, where it's going to say that players can only be re-registered by the same club only if their initial release occurred before the first official match. So in other words, if you're a player, it gets registered with a club, and then the registration falls through before the first official match, then you can be re-registered again. But if your registration falls through after the first official match, kind of like what happened with Daniel and Pau Victor, you cannot re-register those players. So Royal Spanish Football Federation trying to clarify the rule more, and also raising the standard as far as an exception to this rule by making it duly accredited force majeure. Barcelona won their case through force majeure. Royal Spanish Football Federation saying now it's going to have to be duly accredited. So raising the standard or the bar for what counts as force majeure, which would be the exception to this rule. So it looks like Barcelona's attorneys continue to do great work, so much so forcing the Royal Spanish Football Federation to have to amend its rules. Now, this rules will have to be first approved by the Royal Spanish Football Federation, and then it has to be accredited or ratified, by the CSD or the Arbitration Court for Sports. Now, on to the next bit of news, and this was news that was, circulating in social media, which confirmed something that I told you before, and that is that Joan Garcia is now an official Barcelona player. Now, Joan Garcia's lawyer was seen today at the Ciudad Esportiva because, as I reported yesterday, all the contracts have been finalized. Of course, earlier on, I reported that the agreement had been reached between the player and the club. Then the next step was to finalize the contracts. As I said in yesterday's video, the contracts have been finalized. And today, all the contracts were signed. So now Joan Garcia is technically a Barcelona player, but not yet. Not yet, because Barcelona still have to pay the 25 million euro release clause, which once that happens, then Joan Garcia will be released by Espanyol and will become a Barcelona player, which was kind of strange because initially they were reporting that the release clause was going to be paid today, and then the player was going to sign the contract, but it looks like it's happening backwards, where the player signed the contract and then the release clause will be paid, which again, it's pretty strange because technically speaking right now, Joan Garcia has 2 contracts, one with Espanyol and one with Barcelona. I guess he's a goalkeeper for both teams. I don't know, I guess you play one match this week and with Barca and the next week with Espanyol. But pretty strange order of things, but just know that we're getting closer and closer and closer for Joan Garcia to become a Barcelona player. But don't forget, the work is not done because we still have 3 other goalkeepers that we have to figure out what's going on with. We have Szczesny, who reportedly has agreed to renew, but has yet to actually put pen to paper. We have Iñaki Peña, who looks like he wants to leave, but he has yet to leave. We haven't found a destination for him. And then, of course, the big one, Ter Stegen, who Barcelona want to push out, but so far he is refusing. Now, speaking of Ter Stegen, the German goalkeeper continues to accumulate interest. As I reported yesterday, AC Milan is interested in Ter Stegen, and now more clubs have joined the list, including Manchester United, who are looking to replace Onana. Also, Chelsea are keeping tabs with Ter Stegen. Not surprised there. They seem to be keeping tabs on any player with a heartbeat. And finally, Galatasaray, who are set to lose Muslera. Muslera has decided to, leave the Turkish league. They're also looking for a replacement. So all these clubs now join in the race for Ter Stegen, which, again, it's good news as far as the club because it'll be easier to try to convince the goalkeeper to leave if there is European interest where he could, still compete at a high level, maybe play the Champions League depending on where he goes, versus before where it was just Saudi interested in him. That's a little bit more difficult to convince someone to go to Saudi when they're still trying to play the World Cup. Anyways, that is all the news for this video. We'll be uploading another video in a little bit, so stay tuned to the channel. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, and as always, Visca Barça.